This has been really I can't even believe the day at the zoo this afternoon. The cases that I was involved with were, well, I thought very interesting, but this was so beautifully organized, and having your docents here, and I just want to thank Curtis because this is off scale, and I'm really grateful. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you, Barb, but I also want to thank Barb for putting this together. So she is the spearhead behind all of this, and you did a great job. Awesome.
So we're going to have our concluding comments. I'm really honored. First of all, I want to reiterate my gratitude to all of the people who are here, but particularly people who've traveled. We have veterinarians and physicians from the East Coast that I'm meeting all day today, from the middle of the country. And then, of course, UC Davis. We have so many faculty who are here today and so many students who are here, those who are part of ZRI and those who just came. And the students really deeply, deeply grateful. And again, want to reiterate my gratitude to Patricia Conrad and Cheryl Scott and Dominique Riffon and Phil Nelson and everyone else. But particularly, we're so honored that, that the Dean of UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine has joined us today for the conference and is going to be giving us some concluding comments. So in a moment, I'll introduce Dr. Michael Larimore, but following his comments, and the Midwest, Dr. Silber came from St. Louis, but following Dr. Larimore's comments, the buses are going to be leaving, and we're going to try to get everyone back to UCLA promptly before 7, and of course the UC Davis bus will leave for the airport for those who are on that bus. So in any event, I want to really warmly welcome Dr. Michael Larimore to give our concluding comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Barbara. And first of all, what a great conference. Did everybody enjoy themselves? Again, congratulations, Barbara, and also to the staff, your staff, UCLA's School of Medicine, the Western University, and the faculty, and our UC Davis faculty and our students that were able to attend. It's just been a wonderful event, starting last night with dinner. I think one of the good things about getting together with your colleagues is that you get to know them as people. And last night at dinner we had among the faculty a very good exchange, getting to know each other, and started off on the right foot. We heard a wonderful overview of the Morris Animal Foundation, and David gave a great presentation and overview. Morris Animal Foundation does an incredibly important job as a nonprofit to fund animal research. It really fills a very important gap, really, in the portfolio of research that we wouldn't be able to really understand and discover things about what happens to animals if we didn't have foundations like that. So David gave a great overview of that. And the morning started off with a great introduction, a reminder of why we're all here. I think one of the things that really struck me as well is the mix of the audience. It's good to have physicians together with veterinarians, but also we have students, we have technicians here, we have a variety of staff members, and that collective talent and wisdom that's in the room really was evident. One of the things that, and actually one of my heroes gave the keynote address, and that was Tracy McNamara. Tracy did a great job. I think one of the things that's always a thrill, I'd heard a lot about Tracy, and of course being a veterinary pathologist, ACVP, a former past president of ACVP, we're very proud of Tracy. We use her as one of those examples of somebody in One Health that was paying attention. What struck me also about what Tracy was saying is having the right training. Of course, you have to be at the right place at the right time, but a key to what happened in terms of that discovery was having the right training. Training is so critical for all of us. We can think back on our training and who mentored us, what kind of skill sets that we obtained in our training. And Tracy brought that out, that if she had that training, she was able to really articulate that by knowing the difference between species. What species were able to become infected with Eastern equine encephalitis, the difference between St. Louis encephalitis, and being able to differentiate that so that the conclusion was that we needed to test for other things. And it really takes that kind of mindset, that comparative mindset, that kind of training to really come to the conclusion of that. And so that really was one of the things that reminded me of that special training. But the other thing that reminded us of is the need for communication. One of the things that Tracy brought out, which I thought was a very good point, is that we have to communicate. So it's important for these kind of conferences, but also communicate among agencies. So when we're out there in the field, whoever we work for, we may work for a university, we may work for an institute, a hospital. Rapidly we communicate that and response and networks to do that. I'm also struck with the fact that we're under a lot of pressure. Our budgets in our government, budgets in our universities are putting pressure on some of our abilities to really respond. And I think Tracy brought that out very well in terms of that need to be prepared for the emergencies. We can be guaranteed that we will have other issues like West Nile virus come up. They won't go away. We know that our society is very mobile. We know that the environment is under a tremendous amount of pressure. These things will not go away. We have to be prepared enough for that. This kind of interaction at this conference, I think, illustrates that quite well. I love the format, and Barbara, that you put together. I think it was well thought out. I think one of the things that struck me about the cases also is the gamut at which they covered. Everything from reproduction to diabetes. These are all important problems that multiple species have, including humans. And one of the things that I was struck with also is the honesty of the speakers in explaining their problems that they had. They're not talking about their successes and that they have all the answers. What they're really presenting at a conference like this, which I think is really important, is they're saying, what do we deal with when we're dealing with a giant panda with infertility, and how can we handle that? What are the unique features of that particular animal? Then also, the other thing that's a common theme is the attempt to understand what is that animal in its natural environment. And that really came to bear in terms of the comparisons. And then also, when we look at the human situation, the common stressors that we all face in our society that may be common to what animals face in their stressful environments. And I think the infertility of giant pandas and elephants, when you look at that, you would think, what do they have in common? And I thought that session did a good job of weaving those together. And illustrating that when we exchange information, we come up with common solutions, or at least thoughtful discussions which lead to maybe hypotheses that can then be addressed. The oncology case had two major things, breast cancer and also osteosarcoma. Of course, we all know that those affect multiple species and are very important problems in our society. It's incredibly useful to have areas where we have what we call comparative oncology, areas where we can exchange information on the incident, the therapy. We're always interested in more and more looking at the causes and the root causes of cancer, and we know it's not one disease, but multiple diseases. And also, even within a particular diagnosis of breast cancer, we know that those actually are multiple diseases, and in order to attack that, we're going to have multiple tools involved and multiple people involved. And I think one of the things about the oncology cases that struck me was the continued and expansion use of technology, things like looking at the genetic patterns. More and more we're going to be classifying not only by pathology, but we're going to be classifying by their microarray analysis. We're going to be looking at sets of data to look at when we diagnose cancer. And then especially when we're starting to think about personalized care, which we're all interested in. A common theme is to try to specialize and have the therapy appropriate for the cancer. And more and more you'll see that at UC Davis. We're in a large collaboration with Beijing Institute to really get high throughput sequencing done. Really the goal is not one genome, but we're talking now about 100,000 genomes. When we're looking at microbial pathogens, for example, when you're looking at cancers, you're not talking about one genome, you're talking about now the ability to really sequence every single cancer patient that comes in. So we're sequencing your cancer. And I think we have the same goal in veterinary medicine. We may not have the same budgets. I think it's clear that we don't have the infrastructure. I think it was brought out in several talks. But we are by collaborations doing that. And you'll see at most of the major academic centers in veterinary medicine, they're collaborating in cancer with their colleagues in medicine in a comparative oncology way. And these cases by Dr. Rebune and others really illustrated that. I think that cancer often leads the way for another thing, which is clinical trials. Of course, we know they're well illustrated in any major medical institution. If you go to a comprehensive cancer center, you really are dealing with an institution that thinks and breathes clinical trials. More and more, we're seeing that in veterinary medicine, and we're learning from our colleagues in medicine about how to conduct those trials, how to recruit for those, and what evidence base that can raise the standard of care. And I think that that's one thing that that case, especially in an oncology case, is really illustrated. I love the psychiatry and behavioral cases. You know, they're the ones that we can all, somehow we all relate to that. I guess because we're all abnormal at some juncture. But I like the idea, but it also had a serious theme to it, and something, again, that we see as an important problem in our society. Bullying, for example, a hugely important problem in our society. And I think the thing that struck me about that particular session was the fact that when you look at those, what apparently are very different species, everything from a Welsh Corgi to a cat to school children, there are some common themes there that illustrate social stress, you know, and we see that in populations of animals. We clearly see that in our society. And I thought it was interesting how the dominant figure within that social equation can sometimes really be a critical factor for success. I was actually, as I was listening to that, I was thinking about my daughters. We had one particular daughter that was a victim of bullying, and she would come home at that same age, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, crying. And we were very concerned as whether she was going to even make it through junior high, let alone to that. And I think one of the themes that came out of that is the contact with other species or other friends. Friends can be both in a population of animals, but also in a school population. And I was struck by the fact that sometimes it just takes one individual to make a difference in that bullying equation. And certainly with animals, we're looking for that same combination. Do we have the right grouping of animals together? You can imagine in a setting that we're in right now in the zoo that they think about that constantly. They have a lot of animals in a very concentrated area here. They're constantly thinking about what animals go together, what animal may induce fear and fright in another animal and really lead to health problems. And so we deal with that on a constant basis. And I think we can learn a lot in that area, in that behavior. And the same thing with the injury and the mutilation case. A lot of very interesting discussions about the stallion that had that stereotypical almost behavior, and the fact that it was raised in isolation. And numerous studies were brought out during the discussion about animal studies, but also people that live in isolation. And so a lot of commonality in that session. Certainly obesity is an extremely important problem in our society. We have an obesity epidemic, and we understand that, and that epidemic is mirrored in our patient populations, certainly in our companion animal populations where we're seeing that. And what I wrote down in my notes was that one study, I think it was in Britain, that you know, the obesity patterns within the owners are mirrored in the obesity patterns in the animals that they have. And I think that's an important observation, and also the fact that, you know, in this case, we are sometimes our own worst enemy. And we see important problems related to that, including things like diabetes, other outcomes related to obesity. And I thought that particular session was very illustrative of the common problems we face related to that, and the need to intervene on multiple levels, whether you're talking about a Labrador or a cat or people, in terms of that obesity question. And that'll continue to dog us in our developed society, as we have to figure out the problem with proper nutrition and the right kind of nutrition. And the fact that our society, in terms of the people, are some of the poorest in our society that suffer the greatest because they get access to that very cheap but food that doesn't have that right balance. And I think Dr. Heber summed it up quite well at the end of his talk when he talked about the difference in diet, and we've all seen that even in our lifetime. And then when we walk around the zoo, and we went to the sessions here, and I went to 2 of those, one of the things I think this illustrates in a great setting, and thank you again to the Los Angeles Zoo for opening up this short period of time so we could talk about particular projects. So I went to the craniofacial one, which is really all about dentistry. Great comments made, but also illustrate this, again, commonality between the medical profession and the dental profession, and how we really need to talk back and forth. You're talking about species with very different canal roots, you know, everything from a few inches to several inches, having the right tools, the right approach. The other points that was illustrated in that particular workshop is how the fact that an abscess tooth, while it's very, very painful for us, to an animal in their environment, if they're a carnivore, may be a life or death situation. And sometimes if you can't eat, and certainly in the wild, if you can't eat, you may be eaten yourself. And so I thought that was a great illustration of that. I think also the fact that that's where technology really does help to have dentists. Frequently zoos are collaborating with MDs in a variety of specialty areas. We saw that in the film last night in the surgery done on the orangutan. That's where we really, veterinarians are very humble as a group. We know when we need that expertise to come in and have expertise come in and help us on those specialized surgeries and in some cases dentistry. But veterinary medicine is very much specialized. We have our own specialists in dentistry and cardiology and gastroenterology. I think what we're seeing is a mirror image of that specialty then coming to bear on these really unique situations where we have something like a tiger, something like a species that you're not normally trained in, but you need the expertise of that dentist. And then we saw something that really illustrates one of our missions, which is that human-animal environment interface with the micro trash project with condors. And I thought that was a good illustration of really that One Health, which incorporates now not only just animals and people, but also the environment. You know, we all share that. That's something that's very ubiquitous. And I love Barbara's book, which has really a definition of how you came up with that term, a mixture of Greek and Latin, into animals and surviving or surrounding all of us in a ubiquitous fashion. And I think that is really true with the environment. So when we talk about the condors, while we're very focused on one particular species and why they have that unique problem of picking up micro trash and collecting it in the chicks and it being a problem, we're really talking about caring for the environment. And one of the things I really liked about your book, Barbara, was I think it was in a later chapter, you said, why is it this important? Why is it important that we learn from each other? And I think one of the things that makes us all much more compassionate about animals, people, and the environment, we begin to feel more engaged as we're all part of that. And that's really what's necessary. When I travel around the state, when I go to different regions of the state, I see it. I see it in the community. The more we have our community care about our environment, the animals, the more we care about the people in those communities and can work together on a One Health problem, you know, the better off we are, the more empathetic we are, the more we have the ability to set aside our differences and really think about what we can do to solve the problems together. And I think that when we think about, we're very focused on an endangered species, but think of how many people volunteer to help out in the environment. The Marine Mammal Center in Sausalito, for example, hundreds of people volunteer for that. Why do they do that? They care about their community. They care about their environment. I think that's just one illustration of how we see. And I think as we walk around the zoo, you see people are always naturally interested in that. They're curious about the animals, but I think more and more they realize how closely our survival is tied to the survival and the environment of these animals. I think the more we do that, the better off we are and the better off we are in this One Health approach. And I want to again congratulate Barbara. It is a tribute to your vision to bring us all together, and certainly your book is a good illustration of documenting that. I think this conference was a success. I'd like to see more of those. I'd like to see more of these kind of conferences where we get multiple disciplines together to talk about. We may not all call it ubiquity, but we'll have conferences in which we're trying to deal with problems and bring our collective thoughts together. So congratulations to all of you. Hopefully you've talked to somebody that isn't in your discipline and you've carried away at least some new knowledge that you can take back with you in your daily lives. So thank you very much.